Hello and welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. Today I'm in Berlin, visiting an interesting theme bar, Dtagung, which in German means meeting or conference. And judging from the exterior of the bar, you might indeed say this could be classified as a dive bar. Indeed, many patrons say this. But as I discovered on my visit here one night to this bar in the former East Berlin, I think it's something quite more, and that's why I wanted to focus on it here in this feature today. And I've chosen to focus on Dtagung in this feature on theming and immersion, and specifically to address the question, where is the past? And by asking this, I'm thinking of the past in quite a few different ways. Of course, in one sense, we talk about history, and in the case of Dtagung, not unlike, say, the DDR Museum, also in Berlin, you see an emphasis on a certain past that could have connotations both good and bad. For some, the socialist era in the former East Germany was a time of optimism, certain Marxist Leninist ideals that were perhaps realized, but for others, they would say quite the opposite. And this wasn't a realization of some socialist ideal. It was the time of the Stasi, the secret police, in which family and co-workers and friends basically narked on one another for the purpose of the surveillance state. And I think this is an important point here to make about history and the fact that the meaning of the past is often contested. We can debate about the good and the bad of the past, and this is why I think this particular use of theming, which very vividly connotes notions of East Germany, of the socialist times, images of the greats of Marxism like Karl Marx and others on the walls, and these brochures and pamphlets that are all sayings about the party and certain ideals about socialism and people coming together in a collective sense. All of these, when combined, I feel, forces us to think about the past in some unique ways. And I think in addition to thinking of the past as an actual time period, we can also think of the past as a space. And so in this case, this is a recreated space, and obviously this doesn't actually replicate anything that existed per se in the past, but it's an amalgamation, it's a melange of different symbols, images, period pieces, forms of material culture, and photos, which taken as a whole give us a very powerful sense of affect, a sense of emotion, a sense of feeling. And indeed, this would be the third answer to my question of where is the past. I believe often the past is an emotional place. We have certain emotions when we think about our own past and how we've interacted with certain spaces. And I think in this case, the bar then can take advantage of all the emotional associations that many of us have with our own paths. And I think when we think about the past, we often have the notion of nostalgia. And even though, as I mentioned earlier, there are certainly disturbing aspects of the history that Dtagun references here in their theming that are indeed worth noting, at the same time we can reflect on the ideas of the great David Lowenthal, who says that nostalgia is the past with the pain removed. And indeed, I was looking recently at the motto of Dtagun, and the motto is, "Hip is elsewhere, home is here." And for some people, the way that this bar has utilized theming and created an atmosphere in what could be called a dive bar setting is quite comforting. And I think in this sense, this referencing of the past as something without the pain that often accompanies the past is another way that we can retell certain periods of history and indeed reframe them in new spaces. If we never expected these historical moments of the East in Berlin and Germany to be retold in a bar, I think that's one advantage of using a theme like this. It has a startling effect on us, particularly if we're not expecting much in a bar that perhaps at the street level looks much like a dive bar. And indeed, if you happen to be in Berlin, you may, as I did, visit this interesting theme bar, have a beer, and look at some of the very interesting decor that lines the walls of this theme bar in Berlin.